Anna Collins still vividly remembers the excitement she felt as a child, the anticipation bubbling inside her as she carefully packed her suitcase for summer camp. Unlike most kids her age, who stuffed their bags with sports gear and swimsuits, Anna's suitcase was overflowing with books, novels, essays, and poetry she had been eager to devour. To her, this would be the perfect summer, a quiet escape where she could immerse herself in stories, let her imagination roam freely, and embrace the peaceful solitude she had always cherished. But the moment she stepped off the bus, reality hit her like a crashing wave. The camp buzzed with energy, kids shouting across the field, running in groups, laughing, and instantly forming friendships. Camp counselors clapped their hands and called out names, directing children into teams for games and competitions. Anna's fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase. From the very first evening, it became clear that this was not a place for solitude. Every hour was carefully planned. Team building exercises, obstacle courses, relay races, talent shows. Even meals were events, with long communal tables and nonstop chatter. Anna tried to carve out time for herself, slipping away to a quiet corner to read, but her absence was quickly noticed. "Anna, come on! You have to join in!" A counselor urged one afternoon when he found her sitting beneath a tree, a book open in her lap. His voice was warm, but there was a hint of concern beneath it. "I just want to read for a little while," she said hesitantly. The counselor knelt beside her. "It's important to be part of the group. You don't want to miss out on the fun, do you?" Anna hesitated. Was she missing out? She had never thought of herself as lonely before, but suddenly, the eyes of the other kids made her feel different. The whispered conversations, the amused glances, the slight shake of a head from a passing camper, small gestures, yet they cut deep. She tried to engage more. She forced herself into games, attempted to laugh along with the others, but it felt unnatural, exhausting. At night, lying in her bunk, she stared at the ceiling, feeling torn between what she truly enjoyed and what was expected of her. It was during those restless nights that a question began to form in her mind, one that would stay with her long into adulthood. Why is quietness seen as a flaw? Why is being alone mistaken for being lonely? The world valued the loud, the social, the ones who thrived in the center of attention. But where did that leave someone like her? Anna sat at the back of the conference hall, watching as the room filled with chatter and bursts of laughter. The air buzzed with energy, colleagues exchanging handshakes, groups forming effortlessly, conversations flowing with ease. She took a steady breath, bracing herself for what was to come. The evening schedule was packed with networking sessions, casual meet and greets, and a cocktail hour meant to foster new connections. It was supposed to be a simple, relaxed event, but to Anna, it felt like a marathon she hadn't trained for. She could already feel the weight of expectation pressing against her. Smile, mingle, engage, make an impression. As she approached a cluster of professionals deep in conversation, she hesitated. Would she break into the discussion smoothly? Would her words come out naturally, or would she stumble? A familiar wave of tension crept up her spine. But then, she reminded herself, this wasn't fear. She wasn't shy. She wasn't afraid to speak. She was simply drained. It wasn't the thought of talking that exhausted her. It was the thought of navigating small talk for hours, the constant social effort, the endless stream of new faces and names. She could hold a conversation just fine. She had led presentations, commanded a stage, and even mentored young professionals in her field. But that was different. That was structured. It had purpose. It wasn't an open-ended, high-energy social maze. A voice cut through her thoughts. "Anna, I've been looking for you." She turned to see a colleague approaching, grinning. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people." She hesitated, then smiled politely. "Give me just a second. I need a moment." Her colleague frowned, puzzled. "You okay?" Anna nodded. She didn't need fixing. She wasn't missing out. She just needed a pause. And that was the difference, one the world often failed to see. Anna sat in the back of the brightly lit conference room, her notebook open in front of her, pen poised between her fingers. The air hummed with conversation, voices overlapping as colleagues leaned into discussions, exchanging ideas with effortless energy. The facilitator at the front of the room clapped his hands, commanding attention. "All right, let's break into teams. 5 minutes to brainstorm, and then each group will present. Anna's stomach tightened. She had expected this. After all, collaboration was the golden rule in today's workplace. Yet, no matter how often she faced it, these moments always left her feeling at odds with the system around her. As the groups formed, the most outgoing voices naturally took charge, speaking over one another in a rush to contribute. Ideas were tossed out rapidly, half-baked but delivered with confidence. Anna had thoughts, good ones, but she hesitated. She wanted a moment to refine them, to consider the angles, to make sure they were truly valuable before she spoke. But here, there was no time for careful thinking, only speed and volume. "Anna, what do you think?" Someone turned to her suddenly, eyes expectant. She hesitated for half a second, just long enough for another voice to cut in. "Actually, I was thinking we could." And just like that, the conversation moved on, her chance slipping away. By the time the groups presented, Anna listened as a few of her own ideas, ones she had quietly scribbled in her notebook, were spoken aloud by others, repackaged, and met with nods of approval. A flicker of frustration tightened in her chest. It wasn't that she lacked ideas. It wasn't that she didn't want to contribute. It was that the environment rewarded quick, loud voices over thoughtful, measured input. It was the same in school, she realized. Group projects, class discussions, and graded presentations had always favored those who spoke first and most confidently. The quiet thinkers, the ones who needed time, who thrived in solitude, were often overlooked, labeled as disengaged or unassertive. And now, in the professional world, the pattern continued. The employees who networked effortlessly, who thrived in endless meetings, who made their presence known in every discussion, those were the ones who got noticed. Meanwhile, the ones who worked best in solitude, who delivered results without fanfare, who spoke only when they had something meaningful to say, too often, they were left in the shadows. Anna exhaled slowly, pressing her pen to the paper, writing down a thought that had been forming in her mind for years. The world isn't built for the quiet ones, but maybe it should be. Anna sat quietly in the corner of the conference room, watching as the discussion unfolded. The air buzzed with energy, ideas bouncing back and forth, voices overlapping in a fast-paced exchange. The project was high stakes, a major turning point for the company, and the leadership team was eager to find a breakthrough strategy. Her colleagues debated with enthusiasm, throwing out suggestions, some bold, others half-formed. The louder voices dominated, filling the space with confidence, urgency, and certainty. But Anna didn't speak, not yet. She had spent days analyzing the project, breaking it down into its core components, considering every angle. She had mapped out possible challenges, identified weak spots others had overlooked, and crafted a solution that could shift the entire approach. But she knew this room. She knew how ideas were often judged, not by their quality, but by the force with which they were presented. "Anna, any thoughts?" The sudden shift of attention sent a ripple of silence across the room. Eyes turned to her, some curious, others impatient. She felt the weight of the moment, the expectation that she would either deliver something groundbreaking or fade into the background. She inhaled deeply, choosing her words carefully. "I've been reviewing our data, and I believe we've been approaching this from the wrong angle." The room stilled. She continued, steady and measured, presenting her findings not with flash or flare, but with undeniable clarity. She laid out the flaws in the current plan, then revealed a refined approach, one that streamlined operations, cut costs, and maximized efficiency. It wasn't just a different way, it was the best way. For a beat, there was silence. Then, the nods came, the murmurs of agreement. A few leaned forward, flipping through notes, seeing her logic unfold before them. By the end of the meeting, the project had shifted in a new direction, her direction. Anna walked out of the room, not with the exhilaration of someone who had dominated the conversation, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had shaped its outcome. It was a reminder of what she had always known. True impact doesn't come from speaking the most. It comes from speaking when it matters. The room was still as Anna stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the audience. A shift had taken place. This was no longer just another seminar. The air was charged with something deeper. People weren't just hearing her words, they were feeling them. She let the silence linger, the weight of anticipation settling in. For as long as I can remember, she began, her voice measured and steady, the world has told us that success belongs to the loudest voices. A few heads nodded. Others remained motionless, waiting for more. But let me ask you, she continued, taking another step forward. How many times have you seen a quiet mind solve a problem no one else could? How often have you watched the person who speaks the least deliver the most profound idea of the day? A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Anna noticed the subtle shift, glances exchanged, arms uncrossing, postures leaning forward. She pressed on. Somewhere along the way, we began equating confidence with competence, visibility with value. Our schools push group discussions. Our workplaces reward those who speak first, not necessarily those who think best. And in doing so, we are not just overlooking introverts, we are underestimating them. Now the silence felt different, not passive, but charged. A moment of collective realization. Anna let it hang there, knowing that sometimes the most powerful messages weren't the ones spoken the loudest, but the ones that made people stop and think. The once buzzing room was now silent, but not the kind of silence that signaled disinterest. This was different. It was the kind that came when people weren't just listening, but thinking. Anna let the weight of the moment settle before she spoke again, her voice steady yet deliberate. If you're an introvert, I want you to hear this. You do not need to change who you are to succeed. You don't have to force yourself into spaces that drain you just to prove your worth. Instead, find the places where your strengths are recognized. Build success on your terms, not on the world's expectations. A woman in the front row nodded, her expression softening. A man in the back leaned forward, hands clasped, absorbing every word. But this isn't just about introverts, Anna continued. If you're an extrovert, I challenge you. Look around. Who in your office, in your classroom, in your life has been overlooked simply because they don't push to be seen? Give them space. Invite their ideas, because brilliance doesn't always shout, it often whispers. A few people shifted, glancing at one another. A realization was beginning to take hold. And for those in leadership, she added, her voice rising just enough to drive her point home, change starts with you. How we structure our schools, our companies, our teams, it matters. Are we building environments where everyone can thrive? Or are we simply amplifying the voices that already know how to demand attention? Now the silence was charged, no longer passive. It carried weight. Anna took a breath, then delivered her final words. The world needs both, those who speak loudly and those who think deeply. And if we truly want progress, we must stop mistaking silence for absence. We must learn to listen, not just to the voices that rise above the noise, but to all of them. A beat, then a single clap, another, and then the entire room erupted into applause. Anna exhaled, not in relief, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that this time, her voice had truly been heard.